from living their passions in the life that they truly desire. Tiffany is joining us this evening to share with you how to choose self-love over fear. Please welcome Tiffany Toombs.
Yay! All right, hi everyone. My name is Tiffany, as Charla said, and people come to me to help them clear away the past stuff, the emotional baggage, the limiting beliefs, the things that keep them stuck in those patterns of self-sabotage where they know they shouldn't, but they just keep doing it, right? In any area of their life, or maybe multiple areas. So they know that they shouldn't choose the wine and the ice cream over This Is Us, but they do. Or they shouldn't keep choosing that wrong man or that wrong partner, but they do. Or they know that they shouldn't keep settling in that relationship or that job, and yet they do, right? Anybody ever been there in any of those situations? Yeah? I'm not the only one? Okay, cool. So what I want to share with you tonight is what I share with those people that come to me about how to choose self-love. And I just want to note that every time I put up a post on social media about self-love, I have somebody that reaches out to me and tells me to stop promoting narcissism. Now, I've dealt with quite a few narcissists in my life, so then I go, okay, well, I need to educate people on narcissism. So I write a post about narcissism, and somebody reaches out to me and says, you know, kind of being judgmental, that's not very cool. So I wrote a book about what self-love really is, because it's more than just red wine and bubble baths, right? It's about putting our own mask on first, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. But I just want to give you a little bit of understanding of how the brain works. As Charlotte said, I'm really good with the science stuff, but I promise to make it fun. And I want to dispel a couple myths. So I think of our brain like an iceberg, right? Has everyone heard the terms conscious mind and unconscious mind? Beautiful. So let's just make sure that we're talking about the same thing when we use those words tonight. So the conscious mind is the part of the iceberg above the water. It's what we're aware of and what we can see. So tonight, as you're thinking, wow, this is a great event, I'm so glad Charlotte did this, I have some amazing women at my table, Tiffany's so funny, that's your conscious mind, right? You'll be thinking that. So that's your conscious mind. Your unconscious mind is the part of the iceberg below the water. It's the darkness, right? It's everything that we're not aware of. Ooh, that was supposed to pop up there. And our unconscious mind is what really drives our life. It stores our beliefs, it stores our emotions, it stores our memories, it runs our body. And despite what Freud may have you thinking, it actually lives to serve us. It's not this thing that we have to work against. But this is where self-sabotage comes from if we have the wrong things in our unconscious mind, the wrong belief systems, the wrong perceptions of events. And that's what I help people rewire so that they can get something different in their life. So if you were to know or to guess, Heather, you're not allowed to answer. She's been to an event before. What percentage of your mind do you think is conscious? Just yell it out. 10? Cool, so a lot of you read neuroscience books in the 90s, and then you would have been right. More recent research out of Sydney, Australia shows us that the conscious mind is going to come, is really only 4%. So only 4% of your life you are in control of, quote unquote. And 96% of your life, you have no idea why you're doing that, right? So this is why you should go to the gym instead of reaching for that ice cream bucket, and yet the spoon hits the bottom and you're like, oh, did it again, right? And I know you're laughing because you're with me. I'm not the only one. So we need to stop focusing on the behavior, right? A lot of people focus in on the behavior. I have to start going to the gym. I have to start finding the nice guy. I have to find the better job. The reason that most resolutions fail is because people focus in on that behavior, forgetting that there's a belief system driving that behavior. And I'll use an analogy later about the unconscious mind being like a garden, but it's really like snipping the weed at the stem, right? Like the garden looks cool for like a day or two, but that weed's gonna come back up because the root is still there. And so when we act from a place of fear, it's like we're forcing the 4% to control the 96%. And it just doesn't work that way. So what I want to show you tonight is how to start choosing self-love and why you should choose self-love over fear. So I love this quote by Mark Twain: the 2 most important days of your life is the day you were born and the day you find out why. And I am a strong believer that each and every one of us is here with a special message or a special gift that is going to change the world. Now, it doesn't matter if you're here to talk about passion, love, and romance, or sex and romance, whatever it was that Jacqueline talked about, which was amazing, right? It doesn't matter if you're here to bring fearless women together from across the world like Charla. It doesn't matter if you change somebody's life by baking the best apple pie. Somebody out there needs to hear your story, needs to hear your message, or needs to experience your gift. And when we give into self-doubt, when we give into fear, we rob those people who need us to stand up and shine from having that light in their life. So how many people in here would say that you have ever been a people pleaser, or you put other people first? So for those of you who put up your hand, the best way that I found to get started on that journey of overcoming the self-doubt and the fear was to do it for those other people. And on February 1st of last year, I had just moved back to Canada. I actually met Charlotte in an event in Calgary last year. I had been living in Australia, and at the end of 2017, due to a series of unfortunate events from being associated with narcissists, I lost my business and I lost everything. And I was forced to move back to Canada. And after going to the Fearless Women's event and really talking to friends who supported me, I realized that I couldn't go back to the regular 9 to 5. I had lots of people telling me, you make a great receptionist, and I was like, I know, but I don't want to. Right? I've done that before, and they do a lot of work, but it's just not what my heart's calling me to do. And I knew that this gift, this side hustle I've been doing of coaching, was what I really needed to do. And so I decided on February 1st of last year that I was going to just believe in myself for 365 days straight. I was going to put the fear in a box, and I was just going to put it up on the shelf, knowing that in a year, if I didn't like it, I could take it back down, go back to that life, right? Just like I moved back to Canada. And I decided that I wanted to see how many lives I could change in 365 days if I did that. I'll share with you the numbers at the end. First, I want to tell you this is me as a little girl. So in case you're wondering, yes, I've always been this cute. And what a lot of people, as happy as I look there, what a lot of people didn't realize at the time was that I had a lot of pain and a lot of fear. So that's my stepdad. If you ever hear me talk about dad, that's the man I'm referring to, because he very much is my dad. But I have a biological dad and a stepmom. And the reason I had so much fear and pain at that time was because what they didn't know was that every weekend that I spent with my biological dad, I was abused by my stepmom. Now, I was never a bad child. I just loved to perform. So anything that potentially resembled a stage, I would jump up and put on an impromptu dance or a play, and I drew attention to myself. Now, my stepmom had been abused in her past 4 relationships, and I didn't know then that hurt people. And so it was whenever I was drawing attention to me and taking it away from her that the abuse would happen. I'd get locked in closets. I would get burned with curling irons. She threatened on multiple occasions to kidnap me and take me away so I'd never see my parents again, or my brothers. And one day when I was about 7 years old, she put me into the car. She drove me to the outskirts of town and she told me to get out because she was going to leave me on the side of the road for a stranger to come and kill me. I was 7 years old and I begged for my life. Now, even at that age, I think I intuitively knew that she was broken. So I never blamed her, but I did blame my biological dad. Because not only had he brought this woman into my life, he never protected me from her. And then, when she decided to move to the other side of Canada, he went with her. So it was like the ultimate abandonment. And so throughout my life, I carried those belief systems with me. Now the thing is we don't see the world as it is. There is no such thing as reality. We see the world as we are. So I want you to take your hand for a second. And I want you to pretend for a moment that your hand represents all the belief systems you have right now, all the experiences you have, and all the emotions you have. And I want you to do this. And this is how you see your world every single day. If your hand's still on there, you can take it. I didn't tell people that one day, and like 20 minutes later, I look up and this guy's sitting there, and I'm like, it's kind of awkward if I say something now. So I just left it. So for me, I perceived those experiences to mean that I wasn't good enough. And I carried that through every single interaction that I had. When my parents would joke around with me at home, I would turn their jokes to mean that I wasn't good enough. When my brothers would make fun of me in the way that only brothers can, I would take that to mean that I wasn't good enough. And that was just further proof that I wasn't good enough. Every failed relationship meant that I wasn't good enough, right? And I had this string of relationships where it's like, I was dating the same person, just the face changed, right? But the behavior got worse and worse until I was living in Australia with my partner at the time. And on the day I found out I was pregnant, I found out he had a girlfriend in another state. I ended up losing the baby, and I had to deal with everything by myself. And the pain was actually too much. The pain and the humiliation from the cheating was enough that I couldn't then talk to anybody about the miscarriage on top of it. And so that was a pain that I kept inside me. Until I realized that none of this meant that I was not good enough. That all this had happened for me to teach me lessons, just like Jeannie was just talking about, to teach me lessons, to allow me to help other people to change their perception, to change the filters that they wanted to, or that they looked at their life through. And to allow me to help other people choose self-love, which is, why did this happen for me? What am I meant to learn, instead of from fear and just assuming that it means that we're not good enough. Okay? Now I mentioned before that our unconscious mind is like a garden. So when you think of a garden, you probably think something like, where am I meant to point it? Just could be where I'm pointing it.
Oh, the battery's running low.
I can just hit it on it. Thanks. All right. So most people think this when they think of a garden, right? How many people have ever had a belief that they're not good enough? Okay, keep your hands up if they're up. What about, I have to be perfect? Or I have to put everyone else first. I can't say no. Right? I'm not lovable. So anybody who put their hand up or who has their hand up, it's more likely that our garden looks like this, slightly overrun, right? The flowers are still in there, but it's slightly overrun. And so for me, why I'm so passionate about figuring out the belief system underneath the behavior is because I've personally found, both in my life and with clients, that to truly have a profound change, we need to deal with the root, right? We can cut the weed at the stem and the garden will look good for a couple days, but then we're going to need to continue cutting the weed at the stem every couple days, right? We have to use more of that 4% conscious effort to change the 96%. And so whenever we're not consciously focusing on cutting that weed, that behavior comes rolling back up in our face. Right? Now, we are wired to see the negative. We're primarily wired to see the negative. It's what has allowed our species to evolve from the days that we were cavemen, or cavewomen, to now. Okay? The good news is that you can rewire that brain. You rewire it every single day. The brain that you had yesterday is completely different to the brain you have today. So if you've ever heard of a gratitude practice, the reason that it's so powerful is because it starts the process of rewiring your brain. Now, if you've never heard of a gratitude practice, it's every day writing down, preferably by hand, because it activates different areas of your brain than typing does or texting. But writing down 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for, or 3 to 5 things that went really well for you that day. And that starts to reprogram your brain into being able to see the good, right? Into being self-loving instead of choosing the fear. So Brené Brown had this amazing quote that if you set out to find proof that you're not enough, you'll find it. Right? Because that is how you are going to filter each and every encounter and relationship that you have. Now, we have this thing in our brain called the reticular activating system, and it's like your internal GPS. And anything that gets put into that reticular activating system is how your behavior will play out. So if you're coming from a place of fear or allowing those weeds to take over that garden, then you are going to get more fear, more not good enough, more I have to be perfect. Okay? So I've got a table just over there, and I actually run a 2-day workshop on figuring out what your weeds are. And so for you ladies tonight, I have free tickets to my next one. Letting go of your limiting beliefs is kind of scary, I'll be honest with you. It is worth it though. Because for your entire life, that limiting belief has been anybody watch Charlie Brown? You know, Linus with his blanket? That's what your limiting beliefs have been for you. And for me, I held on to mine dearly for a long time. It was a lot easier to say, oh, you don't know what happened to me, than to say, oh, all my failed relationships have one common denominator, me. Right? It's easier to say, oh, but they, right? To point the finger. But when I point the finger at all of them, how many do I have pointing back at me? Right? And so when we truly want to change our lives, we take control by stepping outside of our comfort zone and recognizing that there is an entire world that we can't even imagine when we let go of that security blanket of our limiting beliefs. So I'll leave you with a portion of Marianne Williamson's quote. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And so if you take nothing away from what I've said tonight, I want to encourage you to find your light and to share it, even if it's with only one other person. Because right now, more than ever, the world needs you to light the way for the people who need to follow you. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. I'm a girl from a small town in Canada where having fun was going drinking in fields with cows, right? So if I have a following, trust me, there is a following out there for you, and they need you to be the light. And to do that, you have to put on your own mask first. Okay, so come over and have a chat with me tonight, and thank you so much.